Professor, look quickly. A woman.
What?
What weird creature fills the night with strange and mystifying terror?
It's our theory that we've penetrated the time barrier. We're the first explorers of the actual future.
Victor, what are you doing?
I'm going into the future.
You don't know what you're saying. You're ill. You should be...
No, I must go.
Leave him alone.
You'll know terror that breaks the sound barrier, the light barrier, the time barrier, when you see Terror from the year 5000.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to kiss me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me.
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that's...
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first.
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Thank you for listening to the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we're piercing the podcast barrier with Terror from the Year 5000 from 1958.
Oh, fun. Terror from the Year 5000 was directed by Robert J. Gurney Jr. He also wrote it with Henry Slezar, and he produced it with Samuel Z. Arkoff, James H. Nicholson, and Gene Searchinger for La Jolla Productions.
Terror from the Year 5000 stars Ward Costello as Dr. Robert Hedges, Joyce Holden as Claire Erling, Frederic Downs as Professor Howard Erling, John Stratton as Victor, Salome Jens as Future Woman/Nurse, Fred Herrick as Angelo.
It also stars Beatrice Furdeaux as Miss Blake, Bruce Lum as Senior Lab Technician, Jack Diamond as First Lab Technician, Fred Taylor as Second Lab Technician, Bill Downs as Dr. Blair, and William Cost as Joe the Bartender.
Terror from the Year 5000 opens with narration informing us of where we've been in the realm of science and where we are currently in the realm of science.
Over some footage of fighter jets, we hear that in the year 1947, man broke through the sound barrier. In the year 1958, man launched satellites piercing the space barrier. And in Central Florida, man is trying to penetrate the most imposing barrier of all, the time barrier.
Here, Professor Howard Erling, nuclear physicist, probes relentlessly into the future, only to unleash upon the world terror from the year 5000.
Dun dun dun. We see said Dr. Erling and his assistant, Victor, working as the music plays. The assistant is peering into the time machine's portholes, windows, I guess, looking for whatever is about to materialize.
He looks in and calls out, "A woman." The professor says, "What?" But it turns out this is a false alarm. It wasn't a woman. It was only a statue.
We do see briefly an image of a not quite realized woman's face, though. He's not wrong.
Victor does say that for a second there it looked life-size. Professor says it must have been an optical illusion. Suddenly alarm sounds, and they race to turn it off. I guess it's because of the radiation.
I thought there was some kind of power surge, and they have to shut everything down.
The professor declares they will do no more experimentation without outside verification.
Whatever that means. Victor pouts, and Dr. Erling says that he may have accepted Victor's money, but it was with the caveat that he make all the decisions, he being Dr. Erling. Victor says he may not be a scientist, but his father taught him you don't make money waiting for outside verification. Dr. Erling says he'll understand if Victor wants to withdraw his help, but Victor's no quitter.
All right, says the professor, let's get busy and try to neutralize that statue. And then we see footage of a plane flying around, superimposed over this statue.
Looks like Manhattan. That's what he's flying over.
And now we find ourselves at a museum. The curator is Dr. Robert Bob Hedges. Dr. Bob is seated at a desk, and he calls on to his secretary, Miss Blake. He asks her about this telegram he's received. It reads, "I do not understand why you have not replied to my letters. You have proof that I am not insane. Please establish date of origin of statue to your own satisfaction. Wire reply immediately. Professor Howard Erling, Spooner Beach, Florida."
But Dr. Bob says he hasn't received any statue, so what's he talking about? Miss Blake, who claims she couldn't make heads or tails of that mysterious telegram, recalls that she did get a package today, but she just hasn't opened it yet. She simpers off to go get it. Dr. Bob reiterates the most salient part of the telegram. You have proof that I'm not insane. But does he?
Miss Blake brings back the package, and Dr. Bob opens it. Inside is that small statue. He places it on the desk and asks Miss Blake how old she thinks it is. She says it doesn't look old at all. It looks brand new, and Dr. Bob agrees. So why would the professor want to have it tested? Dr. Bob has known the professor for a long time, and if he wants to have this statue dated, then that's just what Dr. Bob is going to do.
Miss Blake recommends that he use that carbon-14 thingy that he's always banging on about, and Dr. Bob takes a minute to be a little condescending about her casual layman's description of the process. But ultimately, she's actually right.
So that evening, Dr. Bob goes about conducting these tests. But he thinks he must have made an error somewhere along the line because, according to his calculations, the statue was made in the year 5200 AD.
Can you carbon date things from the future, Jeff?
I can't.
Well, I don't think anybody can. It hasn't decayed because it's not old.
Dr. Bob picks up the statue and starts yelling at it. Listen, you she-devil, you can't exist. Not for another 3,000 years. He smashes it down onto the desk, and we fade to black.
The next day, Miss Blake wakes up Dr. Bob, who was sleeping at his desk. She asks if he figured out when the statue was from, and he says, yeah, 5200 AD. She says, that sounds very old, so he repeats that it's 5200 AD, not BC. It can't exist, not yet. Miss Blake takes this shocking news rather calmly.
Dr. Bob says he's going to have the statue sent down for chemical and metallurgical testing. So down at the chemical and metallurgical testing lab, a technician is doing his testing on the statue when a second lab tech comes in. The second one turns on his Geiger counter just for kicks, and it goes off. Hey, that thing's radioactive, he says. The first tells him to put it in water, and then to go get a lead shielding for it.
Water? Really? Radiation doesn't travel through a bucket of water? Well, they're the scientists. Later, the technician is talking to Dr. Bob about how dangerous the statue is. The technician says with 1 week of continuous exposure, you'd be a very sick man, but with 2 weeks, you'd be dead. The technician asked if Dr. Erling has any reason to hurt Dr. Bob, because this would have been the perfect crime. Dr. Bob says that he and Dr. Erling are old friends, and the technician says, with friends like that, who needs enemies?
And Dr. Bob does seem to take this information under consideration. Later, he asks Miss Blake if she's had any luck putting that long-distance call to Professor Erling. Miss Blake says she's tried, but there's no phone number under that name. So Dr. Bob is going to pay an in-person visit to Professor Erling. He books a flight on the Airline of the Stars and rents a car from Hertz.
Oh, well, to be fair, she booked the flight and she arranged the rental car.
As he leaves in his new rental, he realizes he's being followed. The lab tech's words echo in his head. Is there any reason he may want to harm you? Dr. Bob starts driving erratically, trying to shake his pursuer. Eventually, he stops to confront the other driver face to face.
But it's only a woman, and she knows his name. He wonders why, and she introduces herself as Claire Erling, Dr. Erling's daughter. Dr. Bob immediately asks if Dr. Erling's okay. Has he been feeling well? Claire defensively declares that he's not crazy. She's giving Dr. Bob a come-hither look here, but it's kind of subtle. Dr. Bob mentions the telegram Dr. Erling sent, but Claire confesses that she's the one that sent the telegram. He never answered any of Dr. Erling's letters, so she hoped the statue might shock him into some kind of reply.
He says absolutely it was shocking, and this excites Claire. Then you were able to establish its age, he says. Dr. Bob tells Claire that the statue is dangerous. It's radioactive, and Dr. Bob is demanding an explanation for having this sent in the mail to him. And Claire tells Dr. Bob that he is entitled to an explanation, and she'll give one to him as soon as they get to the house.
She asks him to follow her, and she leads him down to a pier, confounding the doctor. She tells him that their home is on an island, thus the boat. He sees a man waiting to paddle them across and wonders what his deal is. Claire says that this is Angelo, and he's the chief cook and bottle washer. Dr. Bob now starts to doubt Claire's Dr. Erling's daughter. She says Victor was right. Scientists are the biggest old fogies. Dr. Bob wants to know who Victor is, and Claire enigmatically says, he's a man. Then she produces her license and registration for Dr. Bob to peruse and asks if maybe he wouldn't like her birth certificate too.
On the boat, Claire is explaining her father's theories on crossing the time barrier. He has been fired from the missile center as a potential security risk for talking with the press about classified information. Then they began receiving threatening phone calls, saying that the professor was a traitor and that they ought to leave town.
He's not crazy, though.
You have proof of that. Dr. Bob asks if that's the reason they moved to the island, and Claire says partially, but the other reason is that the professor's electrical equipment is so powerful it messes up TV reception for miles around. The boat suddenly stalls. Angelo tries to start it up again, but isn't able to get it going. He asks Claire if her father might be using his equipment again. Claire says it's never bothered them this far out before. but Angelo is sure that's what the problem is. So Angelo passes out orders, and Claire tells Dr. Bob, you want to eat, you have to work.
In the laboratory, Victor's looking out the window to see them approach. Dr. Erling's not even there. He wakes up in his room and prepares to go downstairs. Something inside the time machine seems to be thrashing around, but he doesn't notice.
But he does notice the boat approaching through the other window.
Whatever's in the time machine smashes the glass viewing pane with its hand. We hear a faint, what was that? But Victor shuts everything down to go outside.
Professor Erling joins him outside, asks what's going on. He fell asleep, and Victor says that he had been asleep also. Claire calls on from the boat that she's brought Dr. Hedges. Professor Erling is delighted to see his old friend. He tells Victor that this means they'll have the outside verification their experiments have needed. Victor says he wishes he had been told Dr. Hedges was coming so he could have better prepared for it.
Dr. Erling ignores this, and the two go to the shore to greet Bob and Claire. And I guess Angelo. Later in the lab, Victor furtively swaps out the pane of broken glass in the time machine. Later, Bob asks if Dr. Erling knew the statue was radioactive, and Claire asks why no one told her it was.
Her father reminds her that she had been told to stay out of the laboratory altogether, and Victor says that should have been enough. Claire says, you needn't be so mean, Victor. You know you're not my husband yet. The professor explains that the amount of radioactivity has forced them to suspend their experiments. Dr. Bob asks if he wasn't using the equipment just now. Professor says no, he and Victor haven't been able to use the apparatus for a few days now. Victor says Dr. Bob must be exhausted after his trip, and Dr. Bob can't deny this, but the professor wants to take Dr. Bob down to see his lab.
Now Victor and Claire are alone, and she jumps into his lab. Victor's angry at Claire for bringing that pompous windbag to the island. She says she was helping. They wanted outside verification. Victor whines that Bob is laughing up his sleeve at them.
During this conversation, Angelo turns up in the hall and just stares at the couple.
Claire poo-poos this notion, but Victor's not letting this go. Did you see his face when your dad said the statue was from the future? He looked like a boy psychiatrist listening to his pet loony. Claire gives up trying to sweet-talk Victor and gets up. She tells Victor she thinks Dr. Bob is cute. Victor says, cute? Claire says he seems jealous, but he doesn't have to be. She plants a kiss on him as Angelo drinks it all in from the doorway.
Later, Victor goes to find Angelo trying to get into a locked room. Angelo explains that Dr. Hedges was supposed to stay in this room, but it's locked and Angelo doesn't seem to have a key for it. So Victor tells Angelo he could put Dr. Hedges' things in Victor's room for now. Angelo does this, then Victor goes down to the lab to explain all this to Dr. Bob and Professor Erling. Dr. Bob says he hates to put Victor out, but Professor Erling says it's only for one night, Bob. I'll have Angelo get it open for you tomorrow.
Later that night, Victor gets up, checks that Bob is sleeping, then puts his clothes on over his pajamas. He stumbles on Bob's bag, but manages to sneak out successfully.
Victor goes to that locked room, for which he has a key. But he makes enough noise that he awakens Dr. Bob in the next room. So Dr. Bob gets up, gets dressed, and goes to investigate. Meanwhile, Victor goes into the now unlocked room and pulls out a couple of cases he has hidden in a drawer. Victor runs outside with the two cases in hand, and Dr. Bob follows. Victor throws the cases into the swamp.
The next day, Claire and Dr. Bob head down to the swimming hole, swamp, pond. Dr. Bob changes out of his shirt, just his swim trunks. He tells Claire she can go behind a tree and change there. Claire asks if she can trust him, and Dr. Bob says call it a calculated risk. Bob jumps in the pond and tells Claire it feels great. Then he swims down to where he saw Victor drop those cases the night before and opens one.
Inside, it's revealed what appears to be a waterlogged cat.
On the shore, Claire grabs some sticks and swims up behind Bob. He can't see her, and she uses those sticks to pinch his leg. And then she comes up to the surface, sees the expression on Bob's face, and asks him what's wrong. He says something bit his leg. She says, oh, maybe it was an alligator. And then she produces those sticks and grins at him. And then in retaliation, he tries to drown her.
When they're done with their frolicking, Claire gets out of the water first. After she's dressed and brushing her hair, Angelo comes up to tell her that they're ready in the laboratory. Claire calls out to Dr. Bob, who is still enjoying his swim in the muddy Florida swamp water, to hurry up. He's going to see something fantastic. In the lab, Professor Erling and Victor are showing Dr. Bob how their machine works. A bottle is placed in the machine, a sparkler effect ignites, and a new, differently shaped bottle has taken its place.
Dr. Bob thinks that this is some sort of parlor trick, but Dr. Erling explains that it's an exchange, a trade, just like every early explorer did, bartering with the natives. They're trading with some future person.
Dr. Bob isn't convinced. How is the professor so certain that this new artifact came from the future? How else can you explain it? Asks Victor. Dr. Bob smiles and says everything he's seen can be done by any stage magician. So Dr. Bob wants to try something else. Suppose Dr. Bob were to randomly choose an object for exchange. He selects his Phi Beta Kappa key. It's placed in the mechanism, and what comes out is a small disc. Whatever it is was a lot more spectacular the last time, says Dr. Bob. They pull out the disc and has lettering on it, in Greek. Save us, it says.
That night, Victor comes onto the veranda where Dr. Bob and Claire seem to be snuggling together, but Victor doesn't seem to care about that. He's pissed that Bob convinced Dr. Erling to stop the experiments because that metal tag turned out to be radioactive. Dr. Bob says it's just until they find out more, but Victor thinks he's being a coward when they should be taking chances.
Claire tells Victor he's being rude, and Victor says, you would take his side on this. Dr. Bob says he doesn't want to come between the two of them, and he's going up to bed. So exit Dr. Bob.
Claire bitterly bites at Victor for wanting to fight Dr. Bob and says she doesn't want to end up married to a bully. Victor, who has yet to acknowledge that he and Claire are actually engaged, is still moaning. Here we are with the most advanced technology of the age, but we can't do anything. Victor thinks that by unlocking the future, he'll be on top of the world. Claire just tells him to go to bed.
Dr. Bob has gone to his room, but he can't go to bed because the professor is sitting on his bed, talking his ear off.
Bob's in a chair next to his bed, while Dr. Erling is raving about the future, a golden age where we can communicate with the future people, blah, blah, blah. So Bob is forced to fake a yawn to get the professor off his bed.
Outside, Claire and Victor are still sitting on the veranda. Claire calls out goodnight to Angelo, who is going to his shack for the night. Victor asks if she's planning on adding him to her string of conquests. And Claire is insulted, rightly so, and says she's going inside. Then asks if Victor is coming, and he says no, he's got some thinking to do. So Claire goes to her room to get ready for bed, and Victor goes down to the lab to mess with the machine again. From outside, Angelo is watching Claire through her window as she's changing. As Victor is checking the dials on the mechanism, a hand comes out from the machine and reaches at Victor. In her room, Claire looks out the window and realizes she's being watched and screams. The scream startles Victor and that hand. Victor starts to go off to investigate, but the hand grabs him. Victor struggles to get away and grabs a wrench from the workbench and throws it at the machine, and the hand retreats back into the chamber, and Victor bolts the door to the machine.
Dr. Bob and Dr. Erling rush to Claire. She says there's something out there. Her dad looks out the window, and he sees it too, so he and Bob run outside.
As they go downstairs, Victor starts to come out of the lab, but ducks back in as the professor and Dr. Bob race by.
Once outside, Bob and Dr. Erling see Angelo, chase him down, and tackle him. He claims he didn't do nothing.
Victor sneaks out of the lab and back up to his room. His arm has been scratched pretty badly by that hand. Dr. Bob runs upstairs to tell Claire they caught the culprit, and it was only Angelo. He'd never admit it, says Dr. Bob, but he was probably peeking. Dr. Bob advises that she keep her blinds closed, reaching past her to pull them for her.
She finds herself close enough to kiss him. She apologizes for making a fuss, but he takes advantage of her obvious interest and plants one back on her.
She looks at him and says, I thought you were the cautious type. And then the professor comes in to tell Claire the news that it was only Angelo, but he finds Dr. Bob and Claire in each other's arms. I guess Bob already told you, he says. Good thing the noise didn't wake up Victor. The professor leaves in disgust. Claire says that Victor was still outside and said he had some thinking to do. And Dr. Bob says he wants to give Victor something else to think about, so he kisses her again.
And now we're in Angelo's shack. It seems that many AIP movies of this era have a pervy man who lives in a shed by himself. For Angelo, just like him in A Beast with a Million Eyes, loves his girly mags and tacks the pictures onto the wall. Angelo complains about being accused of being a peeper. Then he goes on to ogle some chicks in his magazine.
Dr. Bob leaves Claire
in a very good mood.
She continues to get ready for bed, and Dr. Bob notices a trail on the floor. He follows it down to the laboratory. He checks the door. It's locked. He checks the trail. It's blood. The next morning, Dr. Bob meets with Professor Erling to report his findings. Dr. Bob believes that Victor, through his continued and unauthorized experiments, has brought life through the machine. But the professor can't abide these accusations against Victor, especially after what he saw last night. Then the professor says that Dr. Bob needed to see the experiment performed under his own conditions to prove it to himself that what Professor Erling was saying was true, and the professor will require the same courtesy. So Dr. Bob sets out to prove that what he says is true. He strips down to his swimsuit again. Claire asks him if he's going swimming, and he says, yep. He goes on to where Victor has dumped those cases the days before, and Victor hauls out of the house after him. Dr. Bob brings up one of the cases and throws it on the shore, then dives back down after the other. Victor picks up the case, and when Dr. Bob's head emerges from the muck, Victor throws the case at him.
It doesn't hit Dr. Bob's head, though. He ducks out of the way. Victor runs to where there's a small boat docked. And standing in it, he paddles out to where Dr. Bob is treading water. He starts trying to brain him with his oar. Dr. Bob grabs the oar, tumbling Victor into the water, and then the two start slapping at each other. Angelo, seeing them fight, runs up to the house. Once inside, Angelo tells Claire and Professor Erling what's going on. Then everyone runs down to the pond just as Bob knocks Victor out. He pulls Victor's inert form out of the water. Dr. Erling assumes the worst of Dr. Bob, but Bob says Victor started it. Dr. Erling's still not convinced, so Bob rips open Victor's shirt to reveal what he says are radiation burns, but what look to me like twigs and leaves.
In the lab, a now conscious Victor is being confronted by the professor and Dr. Bob. Victor is going to be sent to the hospital. Victor is still going on about how he has been continuing the experimentation the others were afraid to do. Dr. Bob asks if he's brought through something alive, and Victor laughs, now who sounds crazy. But they take Victor to the hospital. The doctor tells them that it's going to be a few hours as they run tests and everything, so he suggests they go get something to eat and call later. So Claire, Dr. Bob, and the professor drive off, and as they do so, we see Victor running from the hospital. So they find a restaurant. Claire goes in to secure a table, and Dr. Bob makes the call to the hospital. The hospital says that Victor never checked in. Bob relays this news to the professor, and since they can't get a table for a few hours, Dr. Bob asks if there's a good movie in town. Well, there's a movie, but not a good one. The local theater is playing something called I Was a Teenage Frankenstein.
Ever heard of it?
Dr. Bob, the professor, and Claire come out of the theater laughing, so they've obviously had a good time. Dr. Bob lumbers around showing off his best Frankenstein moves.
I think they're laughing at the movie, not because of it. Back in that same restaurant, Victor, who sat himself at the bar so he didn't have to wait for a table, is drinking a lot and nursing his wounded pride. Later, he stumbles out of the bar and down to the water, where he steals a motorboat, and he heads back to the island.
When he gets there, he breaks down the lab door, and he switches on the machine. Now Claire, the professor, and Dr. Bob are at the restaurant. The waiter comments that the professor's assistant was there earlier. He got pretty drunk, and they had to ask him to leave. The professor thinks he must have been mistaken because it couldn't have been Victor. The restaurant TV is turned on, but there's interference in the signal. Claire recognizes it as the same interference that would occur whenever the professor would operate his equipment when he lived in town. The professor recognizes this too and deduces that someone is operating the mechanism at levels that have never been reached before.
Max power.
So the three of them race back toward the house by boat.
Back in the lab, Victor's intent on his work. He adjusts dials and levers and looks in the window of the time machine. Out on the water, Claire's worried that the boat engine's going to die soon, as it always does when they approach the island and somebody's using the equipment. In Angelo's shack, he's losing his porn viewing light.
Then the boat engine does stop, and they're stuck. In the lab, Victor has been overloading the generator, and that causes the machine to blow. Something comes out of the machine screaming, "Ee! Ee!" and it knocks Victor down.
It squeals like a furious pig. With the power out, the boat can proceed, but Angelo can't look at his magazines. His lights are out for good.
Dr. Bob, the professor, and Claire reach the island and go inside where they find the injured Victor. Claire goes off to find some lights and tells Angelo that Victor is hurt. Angelo goes to the lab, and the professor tells him to take the boat and go get a doctor.
Later, we see the doctors arrived, and Victor's comfortable in bed. But when Claire says that she'll stay with him, the doctor says that since they don't have a phone, he wants a nurse to come to the island to care for Victor. In the laboratory, Dr. Bob works to restore the power, and Dr. Erling asks what scared Victor like that.
Dr. Bob doesn't know, but he believes at least part of the answer can be found in those cases down in the swamp. Angelo is walking around outside when he comes across something glittering. He seems mesmerized by the glow and walks towards it. The glow is coming from something shaped like a woman. The woman turns and charges at Angelo, screaming, "Ee! Ee!"
It's a horrible noise, and she's glimmering like a disco ball. The creature rears up on its hind and only legs and lunges for Angelo. We see its horrible face only briefly as it moves in for the kill, shrieking horribly the whole time.
The next day, Dr. Bob is planning on going down after those cases yet a third time. Claire is soaking up some Florida rays near him, and Claire has provided skin diving equipment, so now Dr. Bob can dive with a mask and flippers, since he's not being so secretive about his motives. He goes down and brings up a case and opens it. It looks like an ordinary house cat, says Claire.
Later, when they're walking around, they spy a mysterious floating object. It's a hat. And the hat's on top of something? Whatever it is, Bob flips it over, and it's the dead body of Angelo. Later, at Angelo's impromptu autopsy, Dr. Erling notices the burn marks on Angelo that resemble Victor's.
Claire admits that she's told Victor about Angelo. Her father says she shouldn't have said anything, but Claire says she's glad she did because Victor knows what killed Angelo. So everyone goes upstairs to confront Victor again. Victor says that when he brought back that cat to the apparatus, that he knew he was on the right track. Cat? You call that thing a cat? Asked Dr. Bob. Victor says he thought he had reached a band of primitives and that their witch doctors had made it that way.
Well, that's totally logical.
Dr. Bob says that cat wasn't made, it was born that way, it's a mutation. Well, that explains that woman, starts Victor. Dr. Bob says if that woman came from the same place that cat did, it's a wonder you were even able to recognize her as a woman. Professor says that the cat was still extremely radioactive, and Victor is lucky his radiation burns aren't worse than they are. Victor is more worried about the woman he brought through the machine. Claire reminds everyone that a nurse has been sent for to look after Victor.
Professor Erling wishes she were there already. Victor says they need to do something about that creature. And for once, Bob agrees. They have to get her before she makes it off the island and hurts someone else. Then we fade up on Florence Nightingale, traipsing through the swamplands. The creature sees her and starts talking. She calls out some gibberish words, but the nurse doesn't understand those words. And she says so. The creature, surprised that she's not speaking Greek like she expected due to the Phi Beta Kappa key she saw, transitions into English. She asks for help, but the nurse just legs it with the creature in hot pursuit.
Wait, I need your help, shouts the terror from the year 5000.
But a nurse help a wounded person?
The nurse trips and falls, gets up, and then runs straight into the strange woman. The nurse's screams can be heard from inside the house. Dr. Bob asks if the professor has a gun handy, and the professor has a 20 gauge he uses to shoot ducks. They'll don anti-radiation suits and take that shotgun and go outside and investigate.
With the nurse out of commission, the creature paws at her face and realizes it's pretty nice and it'll go to waste if she just leaves her there for dead. So she pulls out a blank latex mask and affixes it to the nurse's face. It settles down into her features, and then the future woman peels the mask off and applies it to her own face.
Back at the house, Dr. Bob and Professor Erling are ready to leave when there's a knock at the door. They answer it, and it's Nurse.
You did finger quotes there.
Yeah, you didn't hear those? You were expecting me, she asks. We were expecting you earlier, they say. The patient is much better now. Claire jumps in and says, but it's all right. You came just in time, and now she won't be so frightened when the two men leave. So Dr. Bob and the professor go outside wearing their anti-radiation suits, but without the hoods.
Oh, that's useful. In Victor's room, he seems a lot better. He's explaining about how he helped the woman, and the nurse says that she understands. Then she reveals her hands, which have glittery silver nails. Victor freaks out a little, but she tells him to be calm. Victor's confused because she's not hideous like the woman from last night. So the nurse explains. In her time, there's a lot of radioactivity in the atmosphere. By the year 5000, every fifth child was born a mutant. The mutants are all rounded up into a colony, and that's where he found her.
Victor asks how she got here, and she says that she was selected to come and bring Victor back with her, and that only with fresh pre-atomic genes introduced to their account can they break this cycle of mutation. Just then Claire comes in and checks to see if everything's all right. The nurse says they're getting along splendidly, and why doesn't Claire go get some sleep? Claire says she will, but first she wants to get some fresh water. She picks up the carafe behind the nurse and drops it. When she goes to pick it up, she knows that this nurse is not wearing sensible nurse shoes.
No, it's glittery silver high heels.
Victor comes around about now and says he must have been dreaming. Claire offers to stay with him, but the nurse is insistent that he needs his sleep and she must leave. So then the strange woman/nurse brings Victor down to the lab to operate the apparatus. Claire hears the sound and comes down to investigate. The woman has removed her nurse clothes, but she is still wearing the nurse's face, and she's hiding in the shadows. Claire tells Victor to come with her and he should be in bed, but Victor tells her he's got to get back to the future. Then the terror from the year 5000 jumps out and says, leave him alone.
Out exploring, Dr. Bob and Professor Erling find the body of the nurse, but she doesn't have a face. And if the nurse is here, who's back at the house with Victor and Claire? Uh-oh.
In the lab, Claire is still trying to convince Victor to go to bed, telling him he's hypnotized and he's confused, as a strange woman blames Claire for the future to which she's about to return.
She says that they learned that the women of the 20th century stood idly by while the radiation built up. 50s women were supposed to stop it somehow?
Victor says she's right, and Claire asks him, then why did she have to hypnotize you? The strange woman warns Claire not to make her kill again. Again? asks Claire. So it was you who killed Angelo. Claire asks Victor what he thinks of his angel of mercy now. The creature lunges at Claire.
As Claire fights back, the creature's mask comes off in Claire's hand, and then Victor finally snaps out of it, seeing that she's one of them, the mutant. The future woman attacks Victor, and he's burnt very badly. Professor Erling and Dr. Bob enter the room, see what's going on, and Dr. Bob shoots at her. She screeches and tries to get back inside the device. Victor grabs the door, and there's a power surge, and then the whole thing goes kablooey. Victor and the creature are both dead.
Dr. Bob wants to know if there is some way they can provide the genes the future people will need. But to send people through would just mean more of the radiation here, as well as more of the mutants.
Dr. Erling says there's another way. They can change the future by fixing the present. However, I'm sure the three of them won't change a damn thing. And that's the end.
You're listening to the American International Podcast, where we're discussing Terror from the Year 5000 from 1958.
The working title of the film was The Girl from 5000 AD. The film was on AIP's production schedule as early as the fall of 1957, and it was supposed to be produced by Roger Corman. James Nicholson, of course, was the one who retitled it Terror from the Year 5000.
Though uncredited, the screenplay is based on the short story Bottle Baby by print, TV, film writer Henry Slezar, that was published in the science fiction magazine Fantastic in April 1957, though the finished script bore little resemblance to that story by the time it was produced.
Outdoor shots were filmed in and around Dade County, Florida. Frederic Downs, who played Professor Erling, narrated most of AIP's trailers during this time period.
Joyce Holden, who played Claire, was a former beauty pageant contestant who won titles like Miss Southern California and Miss Television.
I want to be Miss Television. Although many modern sources note that stage and television actress Salome Jen's feature film debut was in 1961, Terror from the Year 5000 was her actual debut.
Beatrice Furdeaux, who has a small supporting role as Dr. Hedges' assistant, Miss Blake, was married to producer-director Robert J. Gurney Jr. She is also credited as Beatrice Gurney as production supervisor and co-production designer on the film.
This movie is one of the earliest film credits for Dee Dee Allen, who got her break at AIP and went on to a career editing such feature films as The Hustler, Bonnie and Clyde, Dog Day Afternoon, and Reds.
In a January 2000 Variety interview, Allen mentioned that an entire reel was cut from Terror from the Year 5000 before its release because of the producer's dissatisfaction with Joyce Holden, who played Claire Erling. This is a possible explanation for the 8-minute discrepancy between the contemporary Hollywood Reporter and Variety reviews.
Terror from the Year 5000 was released in November of 1958 as a second feature on a double bill with either The Screaming Skull or The Spider, depending on the theater location.
The tagline for Terror from the Year 5000 was "From Time Unborn, a hideous she-thing."
AIP's press book for The Screaming Skull and Terror from the Year 5000 billed the double feature as The Ghost of Earth Past and Earth Future.
In the Los Angeles Mirror Review, the author enjoyed The Spider and called it worth seeing if you're keen on horror epics. Otherwise, you can cut out on Terror since there is nothing to miss. Charitably speaking, this one is a so-so yarn and the plot is a jumble that doesn't make much sense even by the standards of fictional science.
The Hollywood Reporter called the film fairly interesting because of the far-fetched novelty, but Variety's review was harsher, calling it a weakie even for the small exploitation field.
The Monthly Film Bulletin review said, "The woman from the future is an unimaginative creation and whatever horrific possibilities she has are soon expended. A sad little creature in a tight set of black woolies. The film is crudely photographed with no noticeable interest in continuity and little attempt at a convincing setting."
Critic Kevin Lyons wrote in a non-contemporary review that the film's few good ideas don't go very far, and that it features a far from interesting love triangle and a mystery that never really resolves itself satisfactorily, and that it was weary and slightly browbeaten, but also that director Gurney is capable of isolated moments of real atmosphere and suspense. He did Invasion of the Saucermen too, so I absolutely believe he can do better than this.
Critic Mark Hassan, in his DVD review, described the film as the perfect synthesis of sci-fi cliches and 50s naivete, done with deadpan seriousness, and that Gurney's budget and his own screenwriting doomed the project into a laughable Z movie.
And the film was featured on Mystery Science Theater during the show's 8th season on the Sci-Fi Network.
Well, Cheryl, I really wish that The Terror from the Year 5000 was a better movie than it is.
I wish it had been more terrifying. It's kind of sad, too, because it is a good idea. It just wasn't realized in any meaningful way.
It wasn't well executed, no. I mean, I don't have a problem if science doesn't make sense in a movie. At least be consistent with what you're saying. They backtrack and contradict themselves so much in this movie.
It seems like they were making it up on the fly. They paid no attention to continuity.
And I think the other thing that really hurts this film is that there's no real characters for you to latch onto. There's nobody interesting in this film.
No, in fact, Victor and Dr. Bob are so interchangeable that we couldn't tell them apart. And at one point, you even thought they were the same person. They have no distinguishing features whatsoever. They're bland, boring, middle class, middle century white people. Nobody's very exciting here. We have a mad scientist who's not quite that mad. I guess Victor feels
we have proof that he's not.
Right. That is my favorite part of the whole movie. He's not crazy.
Yeah, you have proof that I'm not insane. I am putting that in every single email I send from this point forward.
But he wasn't the insane one. It was Victor. So I guess that was just supposed to put us off the track. The mad scientist was really the guy who was the money guy, to the point where he sacrificed himself to experiment.
Yeah, I didn't even catch that he was the money guy. I was trying to figure out how he wound up being the professor's assistant, because he doesn't have a background in science.
No, he's got a background in having money.
And he's engaged to the professor's daughter. So usually that happens in these movies where the assistant has eyes on the main doctor's daughter. But it seemed like that might have happened first.
Maybe.
Then you realize that no, he had money, that it was probably after the fact.
We didn't really get a lot of backstory. They didn't expend a lot of time letting us get to know these characters.
And certainly not to have them having any kind of relationship whatsoever, because she's more into Dr. Bob ever since he shows up, and we're following him from the beginning. So,
and he doesn't seem to care about her at all, except to snipe at her a few times about having a string of conquests. So their relationship is non-existent as far as we can tell.
And Dr. Bob doesn't even seem that interested, except for that one time in her bedroom when he's macking on her.
Right. I thought maybe they knew each other from before because he was old friends with Dr. Erling, but he didn't know her at all, which is weird.
No, he made her prove who she was.
Right. So that didn't make sense. And like you said, the science made no sense. Carbon dating things from the future. Why would they even bother sending it to a museum curator to carbon date when it's from the future?
Oh, and surprise, it's radioactive.
Oh, yeah. We just wanted to shock you into coming down here. The whole thing is just a bit sketchy. The whole story doesn't hold together. It's kind of annoying.
Another question I have, was glittery nail polish kind of a new thing at this time?
It looks like they put tinfoil laminates on her nails.
She holds up her hands and kind of wiggles her fingers, and this is how she mesmerizes people into doing her bidding.
Well, that and her sparkly disco jumpsuit that she wears. It makes a force field of lights that surround her.
And we never get to see what those heels are capable of.
No, I can't believe she was running around in those in the swamp, chasing down Angelo and the nurse. She wasn't wearing those outside. She was wearing sensible shoes. I don't know where those silver high heels came from. This movie is just silly, honestly. It's hard to take seriously.
But for me, what really defines AIP is these early 50s black and white sci-fi and horror movies. Like I Was a Teenage Werewolf, The Beast with a Million Eyes, Blood of Dracula, The Brain That Wouldn't Die, The She Creature, all those ones with these iconic posters, and The Terror from the Year 5000 is one of those. But the film certainly doesn't live up to the poster, as most of these don't.
No, it's almost...
But this one doesn't even come close.
No, and the fact that they put it in as the second bill of the double feature tells me that they weren't really invested in making it any better than it is.
That's true. I love The Screaming Skull, but it's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination.
Nor is The Spider.
And I would expect The Screaming Skull to be the B feature with whatever you paired it with. So the fact that it's on even a lower rung than that really says something.
And not good. I thought they could have done a lot more with the creature. Well, I call her the creature. She's a human being, but she's a mutant from the future. They could have done more with her. They make her make this sound that's, I said it was like part wildcat, part pig, and part cat that just got stepped on. That's what it sounds like. And they don't let her do a whole lot in the movie. She doesn't even come in until the last 15 minutes of the movie. So this terror is not even realized until the movie's practically over. They gave her a little bit of backstory, but by that time she'd already hurt a lot of people. So it's impossible to sympathize with her or her future people.
I think one of the smartest things about this film, though, is that when she shows up, she's speaking Greek based upon that thing that she received with Greek letters on it.
The Greek key.
Yeah.
It's 3 letters. I mean, I don't think that defines a language, but what do I know?
Well, she's got to try something. So
True.
I mean, obviously they aren't studying their own history. I mean, this is still Earth, so they would know that Greek isn't spoken within the United States, which she's going to, at least geographically. Whether it's still the United States by then, who knows? Probably not.
But not on the continent of North America. No one speaks Greek here. Well, you know how in Firefly, the Chinese language took over the whole universe? Well, maybe in Terror from the Year 5000, the Greek language takes over the entire planet.
But she still learned English, so good on her.
Right. I mean, can you imagine us learning a language from 5,000 years ago? Well, it would have to be Greek or Latin. English wasn't even spoken 5,000 years ago. And languages change a lot, even in the course of one person's lifetime. So it would be unintelligible unless they still have those hooked on phonics tapes in the future. I think the most charitable thing I can say is that it wasn't good, but it wasn't that bad. It's certainly a movie. The sets weren't falling apart.
The four-eyed cat looked like a cat with four eyes.
It sure did. A waterlogged cat with four eyes.
It didn't look that waterlogged considering it had been in a swamp for 3 days.
Yeah, he left the case open too. When Dr. Bob went down to find it the first time, he tried to shut the case, but it didn't shut all the way. And not only did the cat not float away, it didn't get any more decayed than it already was. I don't know. Victor's the bad guy in this movie, but the movie tries to paint the entire human race as the bad guys because we're destroying our own future. And, you know, that kind of rings true today.
Yeah, that's fair.
I believe it. But the fake optimistic message at the end that we can change it, I mean, we know that's not going to happen. Nothing's going to change. One day we'll wish we had. In fact, it's almost optimistic to think that Earth will be inhabitable in the year 5000, because I'm not so sure right now.
So given what we've discussed here, how are you going to rate Terror from the Year 5000 using our AIP scale where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic?
I think it doesn't fall to the level of pathetic. I think I gave The Beast with a Million Eyes a pathetic rating just because it was such a false promise and such a bait and switch where all these things that we were told to expect, they didn't have the budget for, and they had to write them out of the story, basically explain them away. And I really didn't like that movie. And this one, I think, is marginally better than that. Not much, in that the Terror from the Year 5000 was just one angry mutant. Should have been a lot worse. It should have been a lot more terrifying, and it wasn't. But I'm not inclined to give this one a P because I just don't think it's that bad. It's on the lower end of average, sliding towards poor, but I'm going to give it an I. And just for no other reason than they tried. They did the best they could. They obviously didn't have much of a budget, and they are all running around in the swamp, shooting on location. So give them credit for that. Wasn't a fake swamp. What do you think?
If I'm going to compare it to The Beast with a Million Eyes, I think I liked Beast better than this one. Not because it was a better movie, but it falls into the category of so bad that it's good. There was a lot to enjoy about that movie, and I didn't find any of that in Terror from the Year 5000. It's not fun. None of the characters do anything really goofy that you can make fun of.
Angelo does. A little.
Not really. There's no comic relief here except for maybe the scene when they're seeing I Was a Teenage Frankenstein, and that's kind of bad.
Yeah, product placement. Very heavy-handed at that.
Well, I was talking about Dr. Bob's Frankenstein impersonation when he throws up his arms and stiffly walks around, but
that's not what happened in the movie. They obviously didn't see it.
So I'm going to slide it down the scale, and I'm going to give this one a P. As I said, I really wish that this was a better movie. I wanted to like it, but it just didn't do anything for me. There's potential here for it to be a better movie. There's things they could have done differently, made the story better, like you said, making the terror more of a terror.
And more a part of the movie.
I mean, how much of a threat is the Terror from the Year 5000 if it's contained to a small island in Central Florida?
Yeah.
You think something like that would be more global, or at least maybe endanger an entire state instead of just a small portion of it.
Yeah, and if we have a time machine, then don't they have a time machine? And couldn't they be poaching people from all over the world? Just grabbing Victor is not going to save the race. They need a lot of people taken against their will to their year. But wouldn't the people they brought back just turn into mutants too?
Well, if the radiation is as bad as they say, they wouldn't be in for a good time, I don't think.
No. So that's terrifying, but it wasn't implemented with any kind of, I guess, the plan didn't really have structure. And whatever they thought she was going to accomplish would never have been that much.
And breaking the ice by sending trinkets back and forth, I don't know how productive that is to getting to your end goal of saving the human race. I guess you got to start somewhere.
Everyone likes a present. It's just like putting coins down or trying to get someone to follow your path. Well, it's too bad that this movie wasn't better than it was. It's okay. I guess if people want to watch it, they can. Maybe they should watch the Mystery Science Theater version. What do you think?
I watched it and I didn't think it was much better.
All right. Well, you're on your own then. Did we break the podcast barrier?
I think we're going to shut off the apparatus and just remain here in good old 2024. For the American International Podcast, I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.